where apparently there's some record snowfall. And don't get me wrong, I'm not from here. I grew up. Actually, I was born and raised in Honolulu, but I really grew up in the Seattle area. So I actually am aware of what happens to water when it gets too cold. So you have my sympathy. But also, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm a little jealous because we have not seen a lick of snow here. And last year, we had this record rainfall. We were riding the drought train because of the high priests of global warming that run this state. We were all being told that this is the new normal. And then Mother Nature came along and gave us a slightly above average rainfall. Not some record rainfall, but a slightly above average rainfall. And that eliminated the drought in about 2 months. Because as it turns out, drought in a desert is, in fact, a normal cyclic thing, but so is rainfall along the Pacific coast. So that happened. I'm seeing lake effect snow, which is just a different dog. I worked in Salt Lake City for a couple of years, and in Salt Lake City, we would get this snow that would start around 4 a.m. And I did a wacky morning show, and a pretty good show. I mean, way better than Salt Lake deserved. And we would start, as I'm driving in like at 4 a.m., the snow would start falling. And lake effect snow means that you have this heavy moisture-laden air, like in Buffalo. People know this in Buffalo. And you get these huge flakes, and it accumulates really, really quickly. And so in Salt Lake, I'd be going to work at 4 a.m. to do my wacky morning show. And the snow would start. By 7 a.m., there would be a foot of snow, easily a foot of snow plus. But they were so efficient. And I don't know how your town works. You know, New York City, Boston, Chicago, all those towns have no excuse to not deal with snow. But I will tell you what, Salt Lake City, those people, and you know what I mean by those people, the people that run that state, the people that founded that state, they get stuff done. Let me tell you this. There would be 2 feet of snow by 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 1 foot, 8 a.m. there'd be 2 feet. They would have the roads plowed and bone dry by 9 a.m. There was no excuse to be more than 1 hour late for school. Snow day, wrong answer. Meanwhile, in Seattle, where the Democrats run the place, they felt like we were victims of the temperature, and they could never marshal the resources which were on hand to plow the streets. In fact, it cost one mayor his gig. This mayor by the name of Greg Nichols. Once a year in Seattle, once a frickin' year, it snows. And you see it coming days away. And there's no excuse for any mayor to not have his street team ready to go. Well, this guy didn't have it ready to go, and the city shut down for 3 days because Seattleites, no matter what you think, when you think Seattle, if you think plaid and wool hats and lumberjacks, no, that's not Seattle. That's actually where I'm from. That's the town of Port Angeles on the Olympic Peninsula where, we cut trees down and make stuff out of it. In Seattle, the town shuts down because nobody can drive in the snow. So they're bombing around in Teslas and Land Rovers, and they don't know how to drive a Land Rover. They don't know how to drive in four-wheel drive. And that's what happens when California defecates liberals, which it does periodically. And they go flying out. They do this spray migration where Californians will wind up in Seattle, and then maybe they'll wind up in San Antonio, which is an absolute nightmare for those of you in Texas. There was a period where California was dropping big loads of Californians in Atlanta, and I know they messed up Atlanta, or at least they tried to mess up Atlanta. And so when you take people from this state who have never seen snow in its natural habitat falling from the sky, and then you put them in your state, where by the way, I know it snows in Alabama. And I know it snows in Georgia, and I know it snows in Texas. I mean, I was in San Antonio when it did snow. I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, when it was bite-ass cold and it snowed. Californians don't see snow. They just don't see snow. And then they leave here, and they screw up your state, and that's just one way they do it. We'll get to this. I was talking to one of Buck's producers today, and she said, For some reason, you people like it when I bag on California. So I said, you know what? If you're green-lighting me bagging on California, then you have the right guy. Because a lot of this is interesting. A lot of people are fleeing blue states. And wherever you are listening to America Now, you're going to want to hear about people fleeing New York, California, and Illinois, which those three states have something in common. All three, well, they have a bunch of things in common. All three are run by Democrats. All three are deeply in debt. I think by ratio, I believe Illinois is the one that's in the worst condition because they, you know that part where you're supposed to fund your retirement fund, where you're supposed to bring in your budget annually, and then you go ahead, the first thing you do is you fund your retirement fund. Illinois has been oops forgetting to do that. New York is really bad, but in sheer volume, no one is even close to California. The California retirement system, there's two of them. One of them is called CalPERS, and that's cops and firemen and, homeless counselors and illegal alien massagers. And what other state jobs do we have? Illegal alien psychologists, illegal alien Pilates instructors, all those careers that only California could come up with. The state hasn't funded their retirement fund, which is called CalPERS. It's the second largest on earth, only after the India National Railway. But that's in size. In pure monetary terms, the California Personnel Employment Retirement System is the biggest in the world. I mean, on its own, it's like the 19th largest economy in the world is this retirement fund, but only if it's funded. We have a separate one for teachers, right? So anyway, it hasn't been funded. So that's the second thing that we have in common. And the third thing is the state is hitting the wall. So New York, Illinois, and California have the largest outflow of citizens of any of the state. By the way, the California Retirement Fund could absorb Illinois and New York and not even burp. But it has not been funded. I mean, literally, when I give you this number, you're going to be blown away, and you're not going to believe me, but you can check the state comptroller, because he's the guy who tracks this. State of California, 40 million people. The Democrat-run government thinks it's more important to pay the illegal alien Kale counselor and Pilates instructor than it is to fund their own retirement fund. So it's underfunded by the tune of $280 billion when last they counted. And that was, by the way, that's billion with a illion. That's billion, $280 billion. What's your state budget per year? You know what? We're 10 times that, underfunded in the retirement fund. And the problem with California is they forgot to build a moat. So people are able to leave. Because who do you think is going to be on the hook to pay that exorbitant fund when they have to fund that thing? Because there's this huge glob of state employees that are about to retire, courtesy of this idiot Governor Jerry Brown, his first time around. So when they retire, they don't retire to California. They go to Idaho. They go anywhere the money goes further. They drop in Wyoming. They drop in Utah, Idaho, whatever, anywhere they can screw up another state. But we have to fund it. But you know what? I'm not gonna. Because I'm fresh out of reasons to stay in California. Now that I can't write off state income tax, now that I happen to see this gigantic watermelon in the python coming closer to the python's rectum, I don't want to be there when that thing comes flying out. And I'll be on the hook. I don't want my daughter on the hook. So, yeah, the blue states that are so badly run they're missing something. And that is that money doesn't print itself. You need an economy in your state. You need people working that economy. You need them to keep as much of their money as they can, or else they're going to go next door where you can keep your damn money. So California is a Ponzi scheme. If you want to hear about it, I will tell you more about it. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this. Corey Lewandowski is in booty-grabbing problems or trouble. We'll talk about this. This horrific homicide in New York. We'll get to that. And Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee throwing the R word around at the woman whose seat she took on a flight. And then this flight bound for Japan. If you can imagine this, you're on an overseas flight that's going to be 12, 13 hours, has to turn around and come back because they seated someone who had no business on that flight. I'll tell you about it right after this. It is Brian Suit filling in. For Buck Sexton, the number 844-900-BUCK, 844-900-BUCK. Get on the phone to get on the air. 844-900-BUCK. We'll take your phone calls about stuff and junk. Brian Suits filling in for Buck right after this on America Now. Welcome back. You've got America Now with Buck Sexton. Buck will be back sometime next week. Brian Suits in for Buck. And then someone else will be in tomorrow and Friday. I'll be back here on Tuesday. Welcome back. You've got America Now with Buck Sexton. Buck will be back sometime next week. Brian Suits in for Buck. And then someone else will be in tomorrow and Friday. I'll be back here on Tuesday and Wednesday again next week. So imagine this. You are getting on a flight that is pretty lengthy, an international flight. And 4 hours into the flight crew announces that you have to turn back to your destination. And they don't give a complete explanation about why. So your stress level's already up. They specified that there was nothing mechanically wrong with the plane. And frankly, at that point, your mind starts going immediately to 9/11. So, if there's nothing wrong mechanically with the plane, what's the problem? Do we have the wrong movie? Believe me, I'll suffer through My Cousin Vinny in Sherman as long as we don't have to turn around. What the hell? Well, so then the flight crew explains that they're turning around because somebody got on the wrong plane. So there's 300 of you or so who got on the right plane, who managed to actually read that reader board about departures and what gate and, all that complexity. So the 300, algebra majors, apparently, who managed to get on the correct plane are going to be penalized because one person got on the wrong plane. This is the reality yesterday. A flight headed to Hapone from LAX. Details are now emerging, a few more details. But All Nippon Airways, ANA, a 787 from LAX to Tokyo, was turned around mid-flight. And by the way, if you're thinking, well, why didn't they land in Hawaii? Well, that's because you're looking at a map and not a globe. That's not how you get to Japan from LA, okay? Imagine you're holding an indoor-outdoor Wilson jet. And you want to get from the W in Wilson to where the needle goes in. You don't follow the seam. You go the closest route. Well, okay, so in that case, why didn't they land at Anchorage, Alaska, and just kick his ass out? Well, but I don't have a coat for Alaska. I don't care. You got on the wrong plane, genius. But they didn't do that. They turned around and came back to LAX. Details are emerging Wednesday on how an unauthorized passenger was able to board a flight from LA to Tokyo before the plane eventually diverted back. And by the way, that's not a diversion. You're not diverting back. We have to divert back to where we came from. No, that's a full-on turnaround, causing a major flight flop. A government official told ABC News that two brothers, the actual Japanese guys from Japan, two brothers were, I'm sorry, you know what I did? I printed it two-sided. I hate that. Two brothers went through security at LAX with proper boarding passes and IDs. So great, they get through the TSA point. One brother was meant to get on the correct flight, ANA, All Nippon Airways. The other guy was, he got a seat on a United flight. And they're both, I forgot the name of it. It's like Star Partnership or whatever. But you get miles. There's like 4 airlines, United, all ANA, and some others, and you get miles that you can use in all the airlines and the whole thing. So this one brother is on a United flight, but he's in line with this other brother who's getting on the ANA flight. They get up to the ticket scanner. The correct brother is shown on board. They scan his ticket. He gets on. Brother 2 is scanned, and they don't stop it. He gets on the flight. Both brothers boarded the plane. The flight departed for Tokyo shortly after 11:30 a.m. yesterday. It was not immediately clear how the supposed-to-be United passenger found a seat. Apparently, it was not a completely full flight or something. Which, by the way, leads me to believe that he knew what he was doing. Because the odds that somebody would not be in the seat that he actually booked for the United flight would be kind of long. But I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. 4 hours into the flight, the ANA flight crew, quote, became aware of the situation, and the airline decided to turn around and head back to Los Angeles, according to the government official. The flight landed shortly after 7:30 p.m. the same day, making the U-turn total flight 8 hours long. When the plane arrived, the brothers were interviewed by FBI agents, but not detained. The government official said the two were never detained. There was no indication anyone was ever in danger. ANA issued an apology for the inconvenience it caused to all other passengers on board, which included model Chrissy Teigen, who's frankly not that hot, and also her husband, singer John Legend, who frankly is pretty hot. The airline said it was investigating how the passenger boarded the wrong flight, but they were live tweeting because here's the thing. If you're ANA, here's a pro tip for the future. If you're going to stick your head right up your butt and and look for a decision up there, and your decision is turn the plane around, turn off the Wi-Fi. I mean, you can't piss people off anymore, can you? They're heading back. They just wasted 8 hours. You ruined their vacations. They're heading back to LAX. Just turn off the Wi-Fi, okay? Because that's what did all the PR damage for you, was this model, Chrissy Teigen, live blogging with their husband what was going on. And here's the punchline, is at the time, they didn't know what the status of the passenger was. They just knew that one person was on the wrong flight. That's all the flight crew said. They said, we're turning around because one guy got on the wrong flight. And how'd you like to be that guy? By the way, you talk about, there's one basic rule in life, and that's don't be that guy. You literally are that guy, and I would be the one standing up saying, if I was the wrong guy, I'd be standing up saying, who is he? Point him out. But if they didn't know on the flight at the time that the guy who got on the wrong flight was still going to Tokyo. Because that's a no-brainer. It's like, whatever. Sort it out in Tokyo. He's going to Tokyo. What a coincidence. So are we. Why are you penalizing us? His brother's on the correct flight. He's going to Tokyo anyway.